would like to go ahead, you are set to go.
All right, thank you. All right, I trust you can see my screen okay. Thanks for joining us this morning. And as she said, my discussion this morning is online resources to support your community's college literacy. My interest in public libraries serving college-bound patrons stems from my combined 11 plus years working in higher education, admissions, and academic advising with undergraduate and graduate students and working adult students and returning students, as well as in public libraries. And based on that experience, I wrote Successfully Serving the College Bound, which was published by ALA Editions. And that is a resource for school and public libraries looking to serve college-bound patrons of all ages. I'm currently engaged in research looking at how libraries in rural North Carolina support college literacy of its community. Here I define college literacy as the knowledge people hold about the ins and outs of getting into college. In this research, I focus on the availability of college planning information on library websites. So far, I've found that of the few libraries with these resources, the information is geared towards teenagers, and there are few exclusive college planning events that are held at the public library. What I present to you today are college planning websites to consider adding to your library website to support your college's, or excuse me, your community's college literacy. First up is a website called Know How to Go. I like this website because of its straightforward, accurate, and supportive language that basically says to users, this site is here to help you and it's here to guide you. It has straightforward information that is presented in a scaffolding sort of manner, so it takes you through the steps of how to plan for college starting at the middle school age. And I also like that it has varied types of media. And so there's, of course, articles about planning for college, and then there's success stories and videos of people who have gone through the steps and entered college. And those are very uplifting stories for people to be able to place themselves in other people's shoes and see people like them who are going through the planning process. And I also like that it has attention to students who are coming out of the military and the process that they go through, because there are specific steps and procedures and transcripts that they have to get in order to apply to college. And so I like that it walks those individuals through the process as well. The next website is the federal application for student aid, and it's a free application. And I mentioned that it's free because I've worked with many students who've gotten tripped up if they just look online for applying for financial aid. And sometimes they come across websites that charge them to do this free application. So I want to be very clear that there is the official government website where you can complete this application, and it's a free application. And sometimes scholarships use this website, or excuse me, use the financial aid application to determine eligibility for scholarships using the estimated family contribution. And so this is a very important link to include on your library website so that your users can go directly to the source that they need to apply for financial aid information. Next is regional accreditation. And here in North Carolina and in neighboring states, as you can see on the map, the regional accrediting agency is SACS. And regional accreditation is important because it's a quality measure for higher ed institutions. Accreditation is intended to assure constituents and the public of the quality and integrity of higher education institutions and programs, and to help those institutions and programs improve. And what this says to the prospective student is that this institution has gone through checks and balances, and the accrediting body deems it worthy of accreditation. How I've seen it impact students in my admissions work is that some students go to schools that are not regionally accredited, and then those credits that they earned at those institutions don't transfer. So what you need to know as a librarian or staff working at a library is that regional accreditation is very important, and that this is a website that individuals can go to see if their institution is accredited. You don't have to know the ins and outs of it, just to lead them to that website and they can check out the ins and outs of it themselves. And it definitely impacts whether they will be able to take those credits on to another institution. A resource for families and students with intellectual disabilities is Think College. And this website has a college search directory so that families can find colleges that have programs that specialize in working with young adults with intellectual disabilities. And these colleges offer a variety of programs. Some are at community colleges and some are at four-year colleges, and they offer life skills and career readiness training and certifications. And in some programs, like the program at UNCG, students can take a mix of life skills and traditional academic courses. And it's important for all families in our community to know what's possible in terms of furthering our education. And so I think it's important for a resource like this to be included in our college resources on the library website. In keeping with the sentiment of all families knowing what's possible, I've included the Campus Pride Index. This is a benchmarking tool resource for students who are looking for LGBTQ-friendly college environments. And this resource helps prospective students and even staff make informed decisions based on the campus climate with regard to LGBTQ issues. The index currently has ratings for 17 North Carolina institutions with ratings from 2 to 5, and 5 is the top score that an institution can receive. And the institutions are ranked based on their inclusion policies, campus safety, and things like the quality of life for the students and also staff. And so how it works is that institutions can receive the survey that they fill out that talks about how they support LGBTQ communities on their campus, and then they're ranked. And so that's a very important tool for families to be able to decide if that's an environment for their student to be in. The website here is for the main website for North Carolina Community Colleges. And as you can see here, there's a map where you can choose the community college that's nearest to you. And here in North Carolina, there are 58 community colleges that you can choose from. And community colleges provide job and career specific education and training that really run a lot of industries around the country. In fact, in Colorado, 90% of the first responders are trained at community colleges. They also offer scholarships and different awards, and sometimes there are grants that community colleges receive that are career specific. For instance, Central Piedmont Community College was awarded a grant of over $200,000 to provide scholarships to train more pre-K students. And this benefits not only adult students in that community, but also young children who are likely to be served by public libraries in Mecklenburg County. So it's really important that the adult prospective students in our community who use our libraries know that community colleges are a resource and a viable option for continuing their education. And lastly, we have the College Foundation of North Carolina. And this is one website that was most prevalent on the library websites that I reviewed. And it's a one-stop shop for lots of the information that I had mentioned previously, but it can also be overwhelming. So while it's a one-stop shop, I also like to give people the individual websites so that they can really tailor the information that they're looking for and they don't get too overwhelmed by the websites that are available. So that's my 10 minutes. And if you have any questions, I will take them at the end. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Africa. I really appreciate that. We'll go ahead and move on to Aaron and Garrison. If you want to go ahead and share your screen.
All right, hello everyone. Hopefully y'all can hear me and can see my screen. If not, please jump in and tell me. But hi, my name is Garrison Libby.
Hi, my name is Erin Alsop.
And we are going to talk briefly this morning about a project we've been working on to incorporate archival material, archival research more into library instruction programs. So we both work at Central Piedmont Community College, and it's going to provide a brief introduction to the college and to our archives. So if you're not familiar with Central Piedmont Community College, we are located in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a really great location because there is a lot of local history there and also a lot of great local historical societies, museums, archives, that kind of thing. And our college is fortunate in that we have our own archives that I will let Erin talk a little bit more about.
Hi, everyone. Yes, so we are very fortunate to have a robust archival program at Central Piedmont Community College. We're only one out of two out of the 58 community colleges throughout the state of North Carolina that has this type of program. And a lot of what I try to assist other community college libraries with is building up their archival programs. And it got me thinking, well, if we're building up other programs, how will other programs be utilized? So I then approached Garrison about how can we incorporate these sources into instruction lessons, and hopefully that trend would eventually lead on to other institutions wanting to implement the same practices after their archives are built up. So, I mean, some challenges. There's always challenges to any sort of archive or library. Obviously, funding is always an issue, but raising awareness and raising that archival advocacy flag, so to speak, or in this case, a sign, as you see on the right-hand side, it can be a challenge, but it's also our strength. So getting students as well as staff and just the general public to understand the value of archival institutions and that they're not these unapproachable places that only top tier researchers can attend, but really they are for everyone. They are the people's story, and that should be accessed and shared. And while we have a great archival collection standing on, I'm sorry, you may hear a dog. My dog is in the background and sees a cat outside. Sorry about that. Ellie, please stop. So with that, history faculty had approached us because they were interested in finding a way to incorporate archival sources into their lessons, but they were not necessarily connected with Garrison and his team to help figure out how this could be done. So finding really an engaging way for certain lessons and certain resources to resonate with students.
So with those challenges in mind, we started trying to find some really good solutions. So Erin reached out to me, so I kind of managed the instruction program. She reached out to me and my team at the library, but also reached out to history faculty. And we got together and talked about what we could do to really raise awareness and really bring more usage to our archival resources. So what we did is we started designing, what could some really good library instruction sessions that make use of archives, what could they look like? And working with the history faculty, we started talking about how we can really incorporate these kinds of sessions into those courses, into the kinds of research and the assignments that they already do. And I've got linked here a LibGuide, which I'll make sure this presentation is shared at the end of the session, so you can look through this LibGuide and get a better sense of kind of our plans and what we are working with. So I will turn it back over to Erin to talk about the process we went through to really get that going.
Yes. So really collaboration is really the only, not the only thing, but a major component of really any project, whether archive related or not. And having that partnership between the archives, instruction, and history faculty, we were thinking, well, how can we not just raise awareness of the sources that we have, but the skills that go into finding those sources. So we want to teach primary and secondary research skills through both database access as well as in person. Well, now with COVID, we're kind of scaling that back a little bit, but how to navigate certain archival databases, how to read a finding aid, how to understand and utilize archival resources and why they are organized in certain ways as opposed to other library sources that may be organized in a different way. And then through that, we thought, well, if we are, with all the efforts being made to train the students and teach them certain skills, we thought that we would also want to present this to faculty in a similar way. So we collaborated with the Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence, which at Central Piedmont is the Faculty Development Center that has been newly redesigned. So we're really excited to get in on the ground floor with Dr. Chantel Strickland Davis and her team on how to develop these faculty-based training opportunities where faculty can have that opportunity to see the sources that we have and get an in-person or virtual type of introduction to how these sources or how the research processes could be included in their syllabus or their class curriculum.
All right, if I can, oops. So what might this actually look like in practice? What I want to talk about briefly now is just some of our proposed lesson plans that we've developed working with our history faculty. And what's great about these is that even if you're at an institution that maybe doesn't have its own archives, there are still ways through online archives, state archives, things like that, that you can really bring some of this into the classroom. So one class is we have a North Carolina history class being taught this fall. And what he was thinking about doing is what he's calling the Then and Now project. So he wants students to look at some kind of current issue in Charlotte or in North Carolina, and then using archival resources through the college or through local or state online resources to find primary sources from those archives that might also reflect that same issue in the past. So that's going to provide a lot of really cool opportunities. We've got a course guide that we started making through Research Guides to really support that research. And again, that's linked there, so you can take a look at the end. And again, we'll share out this presentation. Our U.S. history faculty really just want students getting a better sense for what is a primary source. How do you use primary sources? When do you use a primary source versus, say, a secondary source? How to effectively search for those kinds of things to really get students building some of those primary research skills. Because some of his students, do plan to go on to a four-year college and be history majors, and he wants to make sure they transfer to UNCC, to, Chapel Hill, App State, wherever, and are really prepared with those skills, knowing what what a primary source is and being able to effectively search for them. And another history faculty is just really interested in building basic archival research skills for his students. He really wants students to understand what archives are, how to use them, because even some of the, his students that might not be going into like a history career, they might still work at a business that has archives, or they might have to consult records at some point, if they're working for local government, that kind of thing. So all of these lesson plans are going to be really great ways to start incorporating archival material into those courses.
Yes, Garrison, I couldn't have wrapped it up any better than you could have. And we're really excited to get this piloted in the fall. And in terms of the format, we are planning for both physical, and, like in-person and virtual sessions. So, and really through the LibGuide and through video tutorials and Blackboard, we're fortunately able to make it as easy as possible. But obviously that in-person type of situation is always more preferred, but we'll see what happens in the fall. And especially with looking towards our new space in 2022, we are getting a new library and student success center built for us. And as far as I know, construction is well underway. And we hope to, at least by implementing this project now, that by the time we move into the new building, we have already established ourselves and established this program as something that is not just an afterthought, but something that is included from the beginning, and a need and a necessity. And we feel that by combining our efforts or collaborating our efforts with faculty through the Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence, as well as with students and even our local institutions of UNCC, Queen's University, Johnson C. Smith, and even, just local historical societies, we hope to really expand the knowledge of our students and make them aware that, archival sources aren't just for a select few, but really for everyone, and kind of taking this illusion away from archives that no one can access it is really important to us, and the skills involved with that are just as important. So we really look forward to continuing this project and continuing these partnerships, and believe that's probably about at our 10-minute time. So if anyone has questions or would like to learn more about the process or looking to get something like this established, please contact me, please contact Garrison. We would love to talk with you about how this could be brought to your institution as well. Thank you.
Thank y'all so much, and we'll take questions at the end of the session.
Great, thank you so much, Aaron and Garrison. We'll go ahead and turn it over to Adrian and Caitlin, if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen.
All right. Let me get that set up. Okay.
All right.
Everyone can hear us?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, my name is Caitlin. I'm sitting here with Adrian, and we're going to talk today about a program that we were working on last summer called Read at Light Speed. So we kind of developed this together last spring to implement during the summer of 2019. And the point of the program was to have children ages 5 through 12 to match them up with a teenage volunteer for a 30-minute session to practice reading aloud. So each session, Adrian selected a wide variety of materials for us to use, all different topics at different reading levels for the kids to choose from. And throughout the summer, we worked with 28 children, and we had about 15 teen volunteers.
I will say that, like, these children who came in, they didn't necessarily just come in for one time. They were here for like an hour or the full hour-and-a-half sessions that we had over the course of one day. So they were repeat customers almost all the time, and a lot of our teams were repeat. So we really were able to create what we wanted to, was be more of a connected like relationship between the teen and the student. And like Caitlin said, this was created in 2019. It actually came about, I was part of the NCLA Leadership Institute last year, and this was the project that I created. As I was formulating it, we realized that Caitlin uses almost everything that I wanted to do already as part of her tutoring with ESL students and the other tutors that she works with. So we decided to collaborate on this project. There we go. So we wanted to get more teenagers involved in the library. And we thought a good way besides just the typical like shelving or involvement with the teen advisory board would be to offer something like this, like a teen tutoring program. And we found that of the teams that volunteered, like 90% of them we had never seen before in any volunteer capacity within the library. And they were really motivated to do this. They came back week after week. And we also thought that this would be a great thing to really promote solely during the summer, in part because a lot of these teams had time. They didn't have all those extracurriculars, or they didn't have the school load that they typically had to deal with. But summer reading is a big push in all public libraries. And we thought this would be the perfect way to combine these two needs that we had. We always want to promote literacy. And so it felt like very natural to host just during the summer. And then also throughout the whole year, our system receives, especially the children's room, receives so many requests from caregivers about reading tutoring and reading help and how we can facilitate that. And during the rest of the school year, we don't really have the means necessarily, but using teens in a tutoring volunteer level process, we thought was a perfect way to meet that need. So what we did was look at local like public libraries that were already doing this program. Over in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, I met with Paulina Barrier, and they run this program in a similar kind of style, but they have different county guidelines and in terms of what their teen volunteers are allowed to do. For example, here, our teens would have to go through a background check before they could meet with any of the students, and that's a little cost prohibitive, especially considering that we ended up having like 15 teens come through during the course of a 5-week period. But we were able to meet with them in a large group capacity, so it could be like 6 or more teens, and either Caitlin and I would be in the room the entire time with them. So that allowed us to get past the need for a background check with the teen volunteers. But it also gave us the ability when we met with them ahead of time and gave them training on what they would be doing. So tips to facilitate conversation or determining the reading levels of these kids. We showcased all the materials, so they got like a better idea of if the kid was able to read through whatever material they had super easily and could answer questions about it, they could move to something else. And the team would help determine that with the kids to find their interest level and reading level. And then we also gave out sheets. Caitlin created and found various tips and tricks about helping with these things too, that the teams were able to use on hand.
We also, in developing the program, we tried to model a little bit the literacy services that we currently have in the library that are for adults only. That's the program that I coordinate, so that's how I got involved with this. So to follow that structure, we started off, Adrian kind of said, with an orientation for the teenagers to kind of review our expectations for them, talk about what the schedule is going to look like, give an overview of what they should expect at each session, and then, like you said, also some tips for working with the kids. We made a list of scenarios of different things that could happen and kind of walk them through, how would you handle this situation if this was to happen with your student? So we started off with that. And then the teenagers and the kids both signed up for their time slots and their days in advance. So Adrian and I had that information that we could look at ahead of time and kind of plan to pair up, whichever student with whichever teenager. And I try to, like I do in the literacy services program, I try to pair females with females and males with males. I just found with adults, when they're in an uncomfortable situation, a lot of the ladies in particular, they prefer to work with ladies. So I kind of wanted to make the children feel comfortable too, and the teenagers as well. So we also, like I said, we try to do one-on-one, but then we had some kids who would come in with a sibling or a cousin, and you could tell that they just did not want to go without their sibling or their cousin or whoever, or their friend. So in some cases, we would have one teenager to maybe two students. I remember that we had two twin brothers who were probably about 5 or 6 years old, and they always stuck together. We knew that they were going to every week, so we could plan for that.
All right. So as this program wound down, we started thinking about adjustments we'd want to make, and next steps. We planned to implement this program again this summer in a similar sort of fashion. And one thing that we realized from last year, like Caitlin said, we were able to implement the program or start the program in spring, but we weren't able to really communicate with our local schools until quite late in the process. So I probably would have been contacting them right about the time that the state shut everything down, right in early mid-March. But we plan to contact the schools earlier and more often to let them know about this program, to let them know that both the elementary schools, if they had students who were struggling with reading, and contact the high schools and middle schools to let them know we had a volunteer opportunity, because a lot of the high schools require community service in this area, but it's difficult for teens who are under 15 years old or right about 15 years old to find that community service, because that's kind of the barrier for a lot of places. Our volunteers, you could be a teen and be 13 years old to volunteer here. And then we would have had, we also received really a big problem with what happened when children didn't show up for that week. We'd have either, we have reserved spots every week that book ahead of time, but by the time we got to Monday, we might have like 5 kids not show up, and then there'd be teens who are waiting there with no kid. And it would have been nice to ensure there would be an easier way to fill those vacancies. So we'd probably make sure that we email both the teens or call the teens and also the caregivers of our students ahead of time, maybe like Friday, and then remind again on Monday about the upcoming sessions. And while our teens really liked this program, they said they wouldn't want to continue it during the course of regular school year because they couldn't all meet in one-on-one sessions. We would like to determine with the county in the future if there'd be a way to move forward to get specific teams like background checks. So they could continue these dealings with their students in a one-on-one basis on a time that would work with the student and with the teen, because a lot of them said they would do it, they just didn't know when their time would allow for it during the school year.
Another point that we have here is be prepared for the possibility of working with non-English speakers. I don't think Adrian or I were really prepared to have students come in who did not speak English. Now, thankfully, I speak Spanish, and most of the students were Spanish speakers. So I was able to kind of pair up with a teenager who was working with these students and kind of just, look through picture books, or I had some little flashcards that had pictures of different animals, and we would kind of go through things like that. We also had some students who did speak like Spanish, for example, and English, but they couldn't read either language. So to kind of have those picture books and just ask them questions and what do you see and tell me about this. That kind of was how we went about that. And we did have maybe 1 or 2 teenagers who spoke Spanish. So we could possibly consider next time looking for teenagers specifically who may speak other languages to help us out. And another thing that we did, I believe we only did it at the end, but we wish we would have done it in the beginning and the end, was that we created surveys in English and in Spanish for the volunteers and also for the guardians of the children, so that we could kind of just get some feedback on the program, talk about, you know, what time frame works best for everybody going forward. Does your child have any specific needs that we need to address? What are their interests? And just to kind of get an overview of how we did during the program.
Yeah, but at the end of this, if anyone has any questions for Caitlin or myself, feel free to contact us. We would love to answer any questions you have about our program or implementing something similar to that in your community.
Great, thank you so much, Adrian and Caitlin. We'll go ahead and open it up for questions. So if you have questions, you can go ahead and enter them into the chat. While we're waiting for some chat questions to come through, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question. If you do that, please identify yourself before you ask your question. So we'll go ahead and give everyone a little bit of time to get some questions in.
I have a question.
Great, go ahead.
I'm Wanangwa from Polk County Libraries, and thank you guys. I came in kind of on the end of the lightning rounds, but I got to hear Adrian's presentation. I met him before. I'm not sure if I met Caitlin or not. When you guys are planning to do these programs, you have virtual programs in mind for this possibly? I mean, sorry for the background noise. I have dogs in the room with me. Because like our library, we've had to completely eliminate in-person programs at least through the end of the year. So everything's having to be virtual. Is there the possibility of using Meet or Hangouts or something for that?
I think we thought about doing it this year. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think we thought about trying some kind of virtual component this year, but with all of the uncertainty, it felt like week to week there earlier. We didn't want to program or plan anything for this summer. In fact, we weren't even back in this building until like mid-June, I want to say, for a lot of us. It would be something that would be interesting to try to work in next year, but I feel that with the way our IT services and the county would work on this, it would be like we'd either have to have the team call in something like a Microsoft Teams type meeting and have myself sit in the team's meeting room with them as the student also called in, and then possibly they could discuss. I had an idea about like finding books where we had multiple copies and then checking out like building bundles for multiple copies for both that student and that team to work with together. So the student could be reading it and the team could be reading it on their end as well. So that's something we haven't really delved deeper into. It's something though we can certainly probably explore now that we have an idea of what North Carolina schools, at least K through 12, is going to look like for the coming year. So I'll probably try to re-explore that with our managers and other things. But yeah, that's a good question. And something we should probably look for the rest of this year. If not, try to start planning for something like that during the coming summer, like next summer. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you for that.
I have a question for Aaron and Garrison on your archives presentation. Do you have any plans to partner with your local public television station to do any special features on your archives or any special parts of your collection to let the public know what's special about your collection?
That's a great idea. I hadn't thought about it, but I do know that our local, at least the local PBS station, it is, I don't know if the college owns it any longer, but I know that they are affiliated with a WTVI. And they do like the local history channel, the local history programs. But it's something that should definitely be approached, because I think, and even historically, Central Piedmont has used television, radio, really sort of up and coming technology at the time to really make educational tools and sources available to the community. And I think continuing that historical process of, that same pattern is really smart, but we haven't had the conversations yet. We would have to go through our marketing department to do so, but it's a conversation worth having, and it's not a difficult process at all. It's just getting people on board to approve of it. And we feel that by having faculty support us, as well as the students, and raising the awareness of the student need, we will definitely have a better, not an argument, but for lack of a better word, a better case to present when we get to that point. But thank you for mentioning that, because I think it's something that we had thought of, but in the midst of planning and trying to get this started, we hadn't approached that yet. But I would like to continue those discussions.
Thank you. So we had a chat come in for a question for Dr. Hands. With most libraries closed right now, do you have any ideas for how to continue to promote the online college literacy resources to communities where good internet access is sparse?
That's a really good question. Well, that's the conundrum, right? That those communities don't have the internet access, so they can't avail themselves of some of the resources. I guess one way, if it's possible, that the library has access to the internet, they could do some drive-in programming, if that's possible, that folks could come to the parking lot of the library. I know some libraries have been making their parking lots available for folks to use their internet services. So that might be one way that folks could at least have access to the internet, so that they could then gain access to the various college-related resources. That might be one way to make that available. Some other libraries also are lending out hotspots. So that's been a solution during the time of COVID and the pandemic, is to lend out hotspots to patrons who don't have regular access to the internet, and so they can still be connected in that regard. So that might be an option as well.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
And Garrison has a comment about community colleges promoting college literacy. Definitely an option there, because there are so many community colleges in North Carolina, and community colleges, like I mentioned, are doing such a good job of powering industries in that regard. So they're definitely one to tap. Both public libraries can work with community colleges to promote them as a viable resource for folks to continue their credentialing, whether it's a degree or an associate's degree, or particular industry specific credentialing that happens at community colleges. That's an option there.
I have a quick question for you, Dr. Hans. You mentioned like SACS accreditation, as far as not maybe predatory is the wrong term, but maybe some colleges or schools that aren't maybe live up to the SACS accreditation. Is that the place that students should really check to look into the type of education they're going to get, and if it's going to be, they're going to be able to get a job afterwards, or are there other places that they should check as well?
No, not necessarily in terms of like, will that school get me a job? Not for that, but specifically for, like, I've worked with students who went to like career colleges, you know, the places that kind of advertise during the afternoon when we're all at home, and and they provide job training. And folks spend a lot of money at those programs. And so then they would come to a university or a college that I worked at, only to find that those credits don't transfer because that college was not regionally accredited. So, you know, it's kind of that sort of information that I want people to know more about, and making those decisions that you could find a regionally accredited institution that could probably offer some of that same credentialing and programming. It's just a matter of knowing where to look. And so it's not necessarily that, you know, if you're looking at SACS accreditation to find a school to get you a job. It's more in terms of being able to at least apply those credits somewhere else. If you do decide to move to another state or something, that's where the regional accreditation comes into play. That's where it's important in that regard.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we have about 1 minute left, so we'll open it up. Does anybody else have any questions for any of our presenters? Okay, it doesn't look like it. Well, I want to thank all of our presenters today. There was really great information that you shared. We did have a question come up in the chat earlier about the recordings and slides. So the recordings will be available after the conference, and we will be requesting slides if possible to link to the schedule as well. So thank you everyone, and we hope that you have a wonderful day and that you have a lot more learning opportunities this afternoon, later this morning. So thank you.